Yeah, so the thing with Sarah came along. So this was actually just last year. Um, I there's I'm going to shout out a friend, a guy named Victor Indrizzo, who's just one of my favorite people in the world and one of my favorite drummers in the world as well. He plays with Alanis. He's in Alanis's band. And I've known him for quite a while now, and he's always been really generous in terms of like his advice and help. And he's like one of my go-to guys as far as like, when he's further down the road than me, and I like to call and ask for help and advice. Like, what do I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? Whatever. So we're already close, and he just texts me one day, and it's like I'm reading it on my phone, like, what? Because the text was, I just recommended you for the Sarah McLachlan gig, and I'm like, first I like read it a couple of times, like, really? Okay,
Is there
cool.
is there a typo here?
Yeah, it's like, really? But I knew it was real just because I know that like those two bands, like the Sarah and Alanis bands, like kind of there are musicians that kind of circle or go in and out of both bands.
So sorry, real quick.
Yeah,
I mentioned last year I was at Blues Fest every day, so I'm there for like 12 days,
yeah,
and two of the headliners, one day was Alanis, and like 2 days later was Sarah
with
McLachlan.
Sarah, yeah.
Again, to show you that they do kind of work in the same circuit. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
they
continue.
show up in the same places. In fact, they played at Budweiser stage after us last year in the summer or whatever, which is another important moment for me being on that stage, which I can get into in a second. But yeah, I mean, so Victor recommended me, and then I heard from her musical director, who's a guy named Vincent Jones, who's been playing with her for like they've known. Vincent was in the Grapes of Wrath. He's an original member of the Grapes of Wrath. So he's a big part of like Canadian music history in general. And he's been in Sarah's band since I guess Sarah opened for the Grapes like in the late 80s or something like that. And that's when they first met. And then they stayed in touch, and Vince started playing with her in like the mid 90s or so. Um, and was like along for the ride when it just like blew up and got huge. So he's been there for all of that. And so, yeah, he called me and said, hey, so we have a couple of gigs, festival things. And I had, like quite a while to learn the music, which I was really grateful for. And they gave me a whole bunch of material and made it so that it was easy for me to prepare, which is beautiful. And believe it or not, that doesn't always happen. And again, so I showed up. My first gig was like a sound check, like a long sound check, but a sound check and the gig. And, Luke, Melissa, Luke, Vince, Sarah, and myself, and they all
And
had
her
played
gigs
together.
aren't small, so it's not.
No, yeah. And they'd played together for years. And so they all know the stuff. So I knew that all I had to do is just like be super, super prepared, and it should all be okay. And again, I always tell people like it looks like, when you see people doing stuff like that, it looks like it's easy, or it's that thing of like, oh, you make it look easy or something. But I worked so hard to be prepared for that, and I tell people that all the time. Like, it's not, I didn't just show up and play the gig. Like, it took me, I wanted to get inside the material so that when I showed up, it felt like I was inside the material as opposed to just knowing it. um so yeah, and it's been a crazy ride. Like, just again, like one of the big highlights being playing at Budweiser stage, which I went to, which was called Molson Amphitheater when I was growing up, I guess. And I saw so many concerts there, and so to be on that stage myself with her of all people, and also the Ottawa gig, which you saw, was a big one for me too, because it's just like, okay, I'm in my home country's nation's capital, and I'm playing with probably the biggest female artist, or among the top couple of female artists of that entire country's history. And here I am, and I'm just finding myself in these pinch me moments, and it's not lost on me that that's happening, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's really incredible. So, yeah.